All right, let's break this etude down. So to begin with, this starts in the solo section, and it works through the same harmonic changes as featured in this song. And it starts off with a very simple melodic figure. So it's sometimes nice to start your arrangements with a little bit more of an austere or a sparse texture to it. In this case, we have kind of an implied bass line in 2 with a very single melody line over the top. So we have this structure that goes. So very simple. It's almost like a little counterpoint study. And what that does is just kind of, it just opens up the palette for some new musical information, and it just keeps it really simple. And the bass line, it's kind of a 2-fill. I guess I said implied because it's not really a full, half note. It's just kind of on, off, on, off, on. And what that does is it gives you a place to build from, instead of just starting right out of the gate, jumping into all of these multiple parts. We want to kind of build from someplace. And so a sparse entrance is a really great way to kick off an arrangement. And that's what we do here. And in the third measure, we use our sustaining technique of holding a note after the F7. In this case, we're holding the F with the pinky. So what you can do is just practice holding that note and maybe just try to play a bunch of different chords underneath it, all while it's held. That can be a great way to practice this sustaining exercise. So in this case, it's right over the B flat. Actually, you can do it with the third finger as well. Okay, so we're back to a 2-feel. So this push and pull effect is created in the music by the first 2 bars with an implied 2-feel in the bass, and then now we're walking in the third and fourth measures. So that's... So it's like we've traveled a little bit, and now let's pull it back a little bit with measure 5. And then walk again. So that creates a nice, push and pull type of contrast in the time feel instead of just having everything in 2 or having everything in 4. Again, you have a place to build from, and it gradually builds momentum instead of getting there too quickly. We've also added a little bit of blues vocabulary, which always works in the middle of a standard. It's just kind of nice to just bring it home with a, if you get some of that vibe going in the middle of a chord solo, it can add a nice blues element to it. And that's what we've done in those measures. Now, looking ahead at measure 9, I just wanted to point this out. This is using a very similar pattern that we looked at in the Starlight Etude. Starting with measure 9, we have 3 parts happening: the bass, or the root of the chord, the middle register of the guide tone voicings, and then this melodic figure on top. So starting into measure 9, we go into it via a 10th. So what we're doing is breaking up the hand into 3 different parts in the same way that we did with our earlier performance study of Stella by Starlight. And that, we're starting off in this case. I mean, you can do the pattern with any permutation, but in this case, we're starting off with a bass, followed by the 2 chords, guide tone chord voicings in the middle, and then the melodic figure on top, articulated with the ring finger. Okay? That's yet another way to create some contrast in the texture. Moving ahead, we have a couple of single note lines in there into the second chorus that starts with measure 17. Now we have kind of a fully blown walking 4 bass line that we've studied with a melody on top. And so starting in 17, it's... before I go back into a 2-feel. And I would in practicing that, maybe just isolate one part at a time. So just look in the notation, just take a look at the bass line and just practice that at first and get really a feel, not only for the notes, but the overall direction, the arc, where you're going. Are you moving up? Are you going down? Do you need to facilitate movement using an open string? And just try to get the bass feeling really good before you try the other single note lines. And then maybe before you add in the chords, just use two voices, you know? Just keep it simple and try to improvise and mess around a little bit with just those two voices before finally adding in all of the chords, you know? So now... Okay, we've seen a couple of things that we've seen before in terms of the triplet figures, moving bass lines, the pull off to nowheres to create a little momentum and drive, a little forward propulsion in our bass line. Looking ahead after that, we have a couple of block chord figures, and we're using a Wes Montgomery style of strumming those with the thumb. We're starting in measure 28. And then we're setting up that C7 chord and just working through, again, this top-down harmonization of this melody line. So the melody line is... right? And then harmonizing those with a static chord figure. So that's a really effective technique that you can use in solo cadenzas, solo arrangements, intros, endings, wherever you can put them in. Just think top down, meaning that you're going to start with the top note, which is the melody, and then figure out a way to harmonize those notes underneath that. And a lot of times, constant structure will work just great. It'll really capture the sound of a big band horn section or a piano player. Okay, moving into the bridge, we have a little flurry of single notes, and you can come up with your own lines there or practice these, but this is just basically approaching it as if you were playing with a pick or just playing, you know, a solo in a band context, just taking a nice fiery single note line. After we move over to the E flat major 7 again in 35, we start to incorporate some chords again to give us some context here. So, you know, we need to change the sound from major to minor. So a great way to set that up would be using a chord in tandem with maybe an arpeggio. Okay. Then we have another single note line figure, the 2-5, the series of 2-5s leading to D major 7 in bar 45. So again, that's just a single note line that you can practice or come up with your own. But after that, we have a series of bass and chord figures that are going to bring us home to the final 2-5 of this song. One thing that I just wanted to mention out in terms of technique, if we take a look at measure 45 here with the D major 7, this is just a technique that comes in handy that I use whether I'm playing an active, you know, multiple part active arrangement or even just articulating a chord voicing, which is collapsing the knuckle of the ring finger. So if we look at our basic guide tone voicing, guide tone plus one extension for a D major 9, if we wanted to hit that high A on the high E string there on the 5th fret, it's one way to achieve that is just simply roll the third finger back while these are in place. You're kind of collapsing your knuckle, you're getting that motion. And what that'll do is enable you to all of a sudden get that A with your fingertip in here by rolling that back. So that's really great if you just want to play the chord and hear those notes, or as with this example, if it's part of your single note melodic line on top of the chord, you can bounce back and forth between the E and A by collapsing that knuckle to keep the notes separate. Then after that, we're kind of taking it home with a G7, leading into the C minor 7, which is the 2, and then kind of a Joe Pass lick here for the F7, F13 sus to F9, and then just leading back into the B flat. And then this last you could do a variety of ideas to end this off, but this closes out with a little single note triplet cadenza line that uses triads moving in fourths. So we have B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat or F sharp. And then, it's kind of getting to the end of the cycle, but we've also run out of strings. So there's a pragmatic reason for ending it there as well. But also this last D flat kind of voice leads nicely into a C, which is the ninth of this B flat. And I really like the sound of open strings when I can use them in the context of a chord voicing. So I just decided to end this B flat voicing with an open string chord.